The map of Würzburg covered most of the briefing table. Oberleutnant Werner Schmidt had not seen his hometown rendered with this kind of precision since before the war. American military cartography marked every rail line, every major street, every industrial facility with methodical accuracy. The railway station appeared as a dense cluster of parallel lines in the northeastern sector, 6 tracks converging at a sorting yard that handled the logistics for what remained of German operations in Bavaria. Major David Kaufmann stood on the opposite side of the table with a clipboard and a mechanical pencil. "The main sorting station," Kaufmann said in German, speaking with the Frankfurt accent his parents had carried to Philadelphia before the war. "Intelligence indicates this facility is critical for Wehrmacht logistics. We need confirmation from someone with direct knowledge of the area." Schmidt looked at the red circle marked around the station complex. It was February 14, 1945. He had been working as a consultant to the 8th Air Force for 8 weeks, ever since his defection in December. His job was simple. American intelligence officers showed him maps and aerial photographs of German military installations. He confirmed what they believed they knew. He corrected what they had wrong. He provided technical details that improved targeting accuracy. In exchange, he was classified as a cooperative defector rather than a prisoner of war, which meant a private room instead of a barbed wire compound and the possibility of American citizenship after the war ended. The arrangement required him to be useful. A defector who could not provide valuable intelligence was simply a prisoner with better accommodations. "Can you confirm this station's current military function?" Kaufmann asked. Schmidt studied the map. The station had been converted to military use in 1943, when civilian passenger service was suspended throughout Bavaria. By the time he left Germany, nearly all traffic through Würzburg was Wehrmacht logistics, troop trains moving west to replace casualties, equipment transports, ammunition. The station operated around the clock. "Yes," Schmidt said. "This is an active military facility, primarily logistics. Very little civilian traffic remains." Kaufmann made a note. "Can you provide specifics on layout and operations?" Schmidt leaned over the map, using his finger to trace the station's eastern platforms. "These 2 tracks here," he said, platforms 3 and 4, were reinforced in 1942 for heavy equipment loading. Tank transports. The western platforms 6 through 9 handle troop movements. There is an anti-aircraft battery 400 meters north. 2 88mm guns. I saw them installed in 1943. As he spoke, his eyes moved across the map southwest of the station. The residential district. Street names appeared in small print. Zanderstrasse, Frankfurter Strasse, Haugerring. He stopped speaking mid-sentence. Kaufmann looked up from his notes. "Is there something else?" Schmidt's finger was still pointing at the map, but he was no longer looking at the station. Haugerring ran parallel to the rail lines, approximately 800 meters southwest of the sorting yard. Number 47. Haugerring was not marked on the map. Individual houses were not included in military cartography, but Schmidt knew exactly where it was. Ground floor apartment, 2 bedrooms, kitchen window facing the street. His daughter Anna had been afraid of the dark when she was 5 years old. His wife Elisabeth left the hallway light on every night so Anna could see her bedroom door from her bed. That was 2 years ago. Anna was 7 now. Schmidt did not know if she was still afraid of the dark. He had not seen her since November 1944. "Oberleutnant?" Kaufmann said. Schmidt pulled his hand back from the map. "No," he said, "nothing else. The station is a high-valued target. Destroying it would force logistics rerouting through München, which would create significant bottlenecks." Kaufmann wrote this down. "What kind of operation would you recommend for maximum effectiveness?" Schmidt knew the answer. He had flown enough missions and briefed enough operations to understand how strategic bombing worked in 1945. Night raid, he said. Heavy bombers. High explosive for the rail infrastructure. Incendiary for the sorting facilities and rolling stock. If you want to disable this station for weeks, you need to destroy not just the tracks, but the support buildings, fuel depots, everything. Kaufman nodded. That aligns with our planning. RAF Bomber Command has capacity for this kind of target. Lancasters probably, high tonnage. Schmidt understood what that meant. Lancasters carried 7 tons of bombs. A night raid on a railway station in an urban area meant saturation bombing. The aiming point would be the station, but the destruction radius would extend in all directions. 800 meters was nothing. Incendiary bombs did not respect distance. He thought about the last letter he had received from Elisabeth. October 1944, forwarded through military mail before his defection. She had written that the city was preparing for possible bombing, but evacuation orders applied only to children under 12 and elderly without essential work. She worked at the municipal hospital, which made her essential personnel. Anna could be evacuated alone, but Elisabeth had written that Anna refused to go without her parents, and Schmidt was somewhere over France and could not be consulted. So they stayed. Elisabeth wrote, "We will manage. The house is solid. When you come home, we will be here." That was 4 months ago. Schmidt had not written back because after his defection there was no address to write to. He did not know if Elisabeth had changed her mind about evacuation. He did not know if the hospital had relocated. He did not know if they were still at Haugerring 47, but he knew the probabilities. Essential personnel rarely evacuated. Housing was scarce. Moving required authorization. Most people stayed in place until staying became impossible. Schmidt looked at Kaufman across the map. "Are there procedures for verifying civilian evacuation status before targeting?" he asked. Kaufman's expression did not change. "We target military facilities," he said. "The station you are describing is a legitimate military target under international law. Civilians near military installations assume inherent risk. That is why evacuation protocols exist. But we do not delay or cancel operations based on possible civilian proximity. If we did, Germany would position civilians near every military facility as human shields." Schmidt understood. The question itself had been a mistake. It suggested personal concern with a specific target. Consultants were supposed to provide objective technical information, not question targeting decisions. He tried a different approach. "How certain is intelligence that this station is still operating at high capacity?" he asked. "Bombing has been heavy throughout Bavaria. Some facilities may have reduced operations." Kaufman flipped through papers on his clipboard. "We have reconnaissance photographs from last week," he said. "Rail traffic is clearly visible. Multiple trains on the platforms. This is an active facility, not the abandoned installation. Your confirmation supports prioritizing it." Schmidt realized he was trying to find reasons to deprioritize the target, and Kaufman was systematically closing those options. If Schmidt suggested the station was less important than intelligence indicated, Kaufman would ask why Schmidt's assessment contradicted aerial reconnaissance. If Schmidt could not provide a convincing explanation, his reliability would be questioned, and once his reliability was compromised, his value as a consultant ended. There was also the fact that Schmidt's assessment of the station was accurate. It was a critical logistics hub. Bombing it would disrupt German military operations. It would prevent reinforcements from reaching front lines. It would save American lives. The problem was that saving American lives by bombing the Würzburg station would likely kill his wife and daughter. Schmidt tried to calculate alternatives. If he refused to confirm the station's importance, Another source would. The Americans had other intelligence. If he asked to be excused from consulting on Würzburg specifically due to personal connection, he would have to explain that connection. And then what? The station would still be bombed. The only difference would be that Schmidt had revealed he had family in a target zone, which would raise questions about every other target he had consulted on. Did personal considerations influence his previous assessments? Could he be trusted? The arithmetic was clear. Protecting his family meant lying about a military target's importance. Lying meant losing credibility. Losing credibility meant losing his status as a cooperative defector. And even if he lied successfully, the station would eventually be bombed anyway based on other intelligence, which meant his family would die and he would have destroyed his position for nothing. Unless Elisabeth and Anna had evacuated. Unless the hospital had closed and she had taken Anna to the countryside. Unless the bombing would somehow miss the residential area 800 meters from the station. Unless many things that Schmidt could not verify and could not control. He looked at the map one more time. The station, the rail lines, the streets. Haugerring, small print, 800 meters southwest. This is a top priority target, Schmidt said. In my assessment, this station should be hit as soon as mission planning allows. The eastern freight platforms are particularly important. If you can achieve direct hits on platforms 3 and 4, you will eliminate heavy equipment transport capacity even if other sections of the station remain partially functional. He was providing detailed targeting guidance. He was making the bombing more effective. He was doing his job. Kaufman wrote everything down. This is exactly the kind of information we need, Kaufman said. Your cooperation makes a real difference. Every target we can hit with confidence saves American lives on the ground. Schmidt said he understood. Kaufman gathered his papers. One more question, he said. Are you personally familiar with Würzburg? Did you operate out of that area during your service? Schmidt felt his throat constrict. I flew missions over Bavaria, he said. I know the region from aerial perspective. So you have not been on the ground in Würzburg? Kaufman asked. Not since before the war, Schmidt said. This was technically true. He had not been on the ground in Würzburg since November 1944, and the war had changed everything about the city since then. The Würzburg he knew no longer existed. Kaufman accepted this and closed his folder. Thank you for your time, Oberleutnant, he said. The briefing ended. Schmidt returned to his quarters, a small room in the building where cooperative prisoners and defectors were housed. His possessions fit in a single footlocker. Uniform, toiletries, 3 books, a wooden picture frame. He took out the frame. Elisabeth and Anna, photographed in summer 1943. Anna was 5, smiling, missing both front teeth. Elisabeth was 31, her expression serious the way it always was when she knew a camera was pointed at her. Schmidt set the frame on the desk. Then he opened the desk drawer and placed the frame inside, face down, and closed the drawer. He sat on the edge of his bed. Through the window, he could see English countryside, fields, and low stone walls. Outside, an American transport truck drove past. Someone was shouting orders in English, the sounds of an airbase preparing for operations. Schmidt did not move. He sat very still with his hands on his knees and calculated probabilities he could not change. On March 14th, 21 days after Schmidt confirmed the Würzburg station as a priority target, Major Kaufman summoned him to the operations center. Schmidt arrived expecting routine consultation. Instead, Kaufman handed him a mission schedule marked with red classification stamps. Tomorrow night, Kaufman said, Würzburg main station, RAF Bomber Command. Weather window is optimal. Your assessment was instrumental in prioritizing this target. Schmidt looked at the date. March 16th. he calculated automatically. 900 kilometers from England to Würzburg. Lancaster bombers cruising at 300 kilometers per hour. Departure around 2100 hours. Target approach midnight. Return by 0400. His family, if they remained at Haugerring 47, had 36 hours left. Kaufmann was waiting for response. "Any updates to your assessment?" he asked. Schmidt said no. No updates. He returned to his quarters and sat at his desk. 36 hours. He opened the drawer and took out the photograph. Elisabeth and Anna, summer 1943. Anna's missing teeth. Elisabeth's serious expression. Schmidt tried to remember the last conversation he had with Elisabeth before his final mission. November 1944. He had been granted 3 days' leave. They had sat in the kitchen at Haugerring 47. Elisabeth had told him that Anna's teacher said she was doing well in mathematics. Schmidt had said that was good. They had not talked about the war. Everyone was tired of talking about the war. He put the photograph face up on the desk and made a decision. He would attempt to send a message. Not through official channels, which did not exist, but the Americans processed hundreds of German prisoners weekly. Some of those prisoners came from Bavaria. Some might be transferred to camps near Würzburg after processing. It was possible, though prohibited, to pass a message through a prisoner being sent back to Germany. Schmidt went to the prisoner processing center. He found a sergeant managing intake paperwork and asked, in English, if any prisoners scheduled for transfer had listed Würzburg as home city. The sergeant looked at him with suspicion. "Why do you need to know?" he asked. Schmidt explained he was a cooperative defector working in intelligence. He needed to verify information about Würzburg for targeting assessment. This was not technically a lie. He did need information about Würzburg. He simply did not explain what information or why. The sergeant checked his lists. 3 prisoners from Würzburg region captured last week, he said. Being transferred to holding facility in France tomorrow. Why? Schmidt asked if he could speak with them briefly to confirm details about the city layout. The sergeant said that required authorization from an intelligence officer. Schmidt returned to Kaufmann's office. He explained he wanted to interview recently captured prisoners from Würzburg to verify current conditions in the city. Kaufmann asked why this was necessary when the bombing was already scheduled. Schmidt said he wanted to confirm the station remained operational at full capacity. Kaufmann studied him. "This is about your family," he said, "not about the target." Schmidt did not deny it. Kaufmann shook his head. "I cannot authorize you to contact prisoners for personal reasons," he said. "That violates protocols. If you attempt to send unauthorized communication to Germany, you will be reclassified as a security risk. Do you understand what that means?" Schmidt understood. Security risk meant confinement. No more consultations. Possible prosecution. "I understand," Schmidt said. He left Kaufmann's office. He had approximately 32 hours remaining and no method of warning his family. He considered violating the order and attempting to pass a message anyway, but he knew the sergeant would report it and Schmidt would be arrested before any prisoner transferred to France. Even if a message reached a prisoner, that prisoner would have no reason to deliver it and no ability to reach Haugerring 47 before the bombing. The arithmetic was final. He could do nothing. On March 15th, Schmidt attended his scheduled consultations. He provided assessments on 3 targets in southern Germany. That evening, he sat in his quarters and listened to aircraft maintenance crews preparing bombers for the night's operations. He did not know which aircraft were assigned to Würzburg. The base housed multiple squadrons. Some would target München, some Augsburg, some Würzburg. At 2200 hours, Schmidt heard the first bombers taking off. The sound was distinct. 4 Merlin engines per Lancaster, deep synchronized roar. He went to his window. Aircraft lights moved across the dark sky, formations assembling. He counted, lost count, counted again. Estimated at least 200 aircraft departing over the course of an hour, he calculated. 200 bombers, 7 tons of payload per bomber, 1,400 tons of explosives and incendiaries. Even if only 1/3 of that force targeted Würzburg, the city would be destroyed. Schmidt remained at the window. The last bombers departed at 2300 hours. Silence returned. He looked at his watch. They would reach Würzburg at approximately midnight. Elisabeth and Anna, if they were sleeping, would not hear the air raid sirens until the first bombs fell. The station was 800 meters from Haugerring. At 800 meters, high explosive concussion could collapse buildings. Incendiaries would create firestorms that spread across entire districts. The weather forecast had called for dry conditions and light winds. Ideal bombing weather. Ideal conditions for fire. Schmidt sat at his desk with the photograph. He thought about Anna, afraid of the dark. He thought about Elisabeth leaving the hallway light on. He wondered if they still did that. He wondered if the lights were on now, at Haugerring 47, at midnight on March the 16th, 1945. He remained awake. At 0200 hours, he heard aircraft returning. Engines sounded different coming back. Some were damaged, running rough. He counted again. Not all aircraft returned. He estimated 20 to 30 missing from the formations that departed, shot down over Germany or crashed returning across the channel. At 0400 hours, the last aircraft landed. Schmidt had not moved from his desk. At 0800 hours, he reported for his scheduled consultation. Kaufmann was in the operations center reviewing preliminary mission reports. He saw Schmidt and gestured him over. Würzburg operation was successful, Kaufmann said. Heavy damage to target area. Reconnaissance flight is scheduled for this afternoon. We will have aerial photographs by evening. Schmidt asked if there were casualty estimates. Kaufmann looked at him. Military or civilian? Both, Schmidt said. Kaufmann shuffled through papers. German anti-aircraft defenses shot down approximately 26 bombers, he said. That is crew losses of approximately 180. We are still confirming numbers. As for German casualties, we have no immediate data. Damage assessment focuses on military infrastructure. Schmidt said he understood. He asked if he could see the reconnaissance photographs when they arrived. Kaufmann hesitated. Then he said, "Yes. I will notify you." Schmidt spent the day completing routine consultations. He provided information about rail facilities in Regensburg and Augsburg. He confirmed anti-aircraft battery positions near München. He was professional and accurate. At 1800 hours, Kaufmann sent a clerk to retrieve him. The reconnaissance photographs had arrived. Schmidt went to the operations center. Kaufmann had spread the photographs across a large table. Aerial views of Würzburg, taken from high altitude in afternoon light. The images were sharp. Schmidt could see individual buildings. The station was destroyed. The sorting yard was a field of twisted metal and cratered earth. The main terminal building had collapsed. Tracks were torn apart. Everything within 500 meters of the station was rubble. Schmidt's eyes moved southwest from the station. The residential district. He found Sanderstrasse, found Frankfurter Strasse, found Haugerring. The entire block where number 47 had stood was gone. Not damaged, gone. The photograph showed empty space where buildings had been. The firestorm had burned so hot that structures had not merely collapsed, but had been consumed entirely. What remained was ash and foundation stones. Kaufmann stood beside him. "I am sorry," Kaufmann said quietly. Schmidt did not respond. He stared at the photograph. 800 meters from the station. The calculation had been accurate. The intelligence he provided had been precise. The bombs had fallen exactly where they were supposed to fall, and the fire had spread exactly as fire spreads when 1,400 tons of incendiaries are dropped on a dry city with light winds. "Do you need a moment?" Kaufman asked. Schmidt shook his head. He asked if casualty estimates were available yet. Kaufman consulted a report. "Initial estimates suggest approximately 5,000 civilian dead," he said. "The number will likely increase as rescue operations continue." The firestorm spread beyond the immediate target area. This was a densely populated district. 5,000, Schmidt repeated. "The station was a legitimate military target," Kaufman said. "You provided accurate intelligence. This outcome is not your responsibility." Schmidt looked at him. "I gave you the coordinates," he said. "I told you which platforms to hit. I made this raid more effective. That is the definition of responsibility." Kaufman's expression hardened. "You provided intelligence about a military installation," he said. "Commanders made targeting decisions. Pilots executed missions. You were one component in a large operation. If you had refused to provide information, we would have obtained it elsewhere, and the outcome would have been identical. You did not cause this." Schmidt understood what Kaufman was doing. Kaufman was offering him absolution through distributed responsibility. No single person caused 5,000 deaths. The system caused 5,000 deaths. Schmidt was merely a part of the system. This logic was correct and completely useless. "I need to file a formal inquiry about my family," Schmidt said. Kaufman nodded. "I will provide the necessary forms. It will take time to process. Würzburg is not yet occupied. Civilian casualty lists will not be available until German authorities are accessible." "How long?" Schmidt asked. "Weeks," Kaufman said. "Possibly months." Schmidt looked at the photograph again. The empty block where Haugerring had been. If Elisabeth and Anna had been there, they were dead. If they had evacuated, they were possibly alive somewhere in Bavaria, and Schmidt would not know until Allied forces occupied the region and administrative records became available. Until then, he would continue his consultations. He would provide targeting information for other cities, other railway stations, other residential districts 800 meters from legitimate military targets. "Can I keep this photograph?" Schmidt asked. Kaufman hesitated, then nodded. "It is classified material," he said. "Do not remove it from secure areas." Schmidt took the photograph back to his quarters. He placed it on his desk beside the photograph of Elisabeth and Anna. Haugerring before and after. In one photograph, a 7-year-old girl smiling with missing teeth. In the other photograph, empty ash. That evening, Lieutenant Harrison found Schmidt in his quarters and informed him that a consultation was scheduled for the following morning. Stuttgart rail facilities required assessment. Schmidt said he would be available. Harrison left. Schmidt sat at his desk with both photographs. He thought about the question Kaufman had asked. "Did your personal connection influence your assessment?" Schmidt had said no, and that had been true. His personal connection had not influenced his assessment. His assessment had been accurate. The station had been a high-value military target. Destroying it had disrupted German logistics. It had probably saved American lives. The problem was not that his assessment had been inaccurate. The problem was that accurate assessment plus effective execution equaled his family dead and 4,998 other people dead in a firestorm that consumed an entire district because someone needed to destroy a railway station. Schmidt opened his desk drawer and placed both photographs inside. He closed the drawer and prepared his notes for the Stuttgart consultation. On April 26, 1945, 6 weeks after the Würzburg bombing, Schmidt received notification that his inquiry regarding family members had been processed. American forces had occupied Würzburg on April 4th. Civilian casualty records were now accessible. Schmidt was instructed to report to Captain Morris at the Red Cross liaison office. Morris had a folder on his desk. He opened it before Schmidt sat down. Elisabeth Schmidt, born March 8, 1914, Morris read from a typed document. Confirmed deceased March 16, 1945. Cause of death listed as air raid casualty. Anna Schmidt, born June 2, 1938. Confirmed deceased same date, same cause. Bodies recovered from residential building at Haugerring, 47. Identified through building registry and personal effects. Buried mass grave, Municipal Cemetery, Würzburg. Grave marker number 204. Morris closed the folder. "I am very sorry for your loss," he said. Schmidt asked if there were additional details about time or circumstances. Morris reopened the folder briefly. "Document does not specify individual circumstances," he said. "Most casualties occurred within first 2 hours of the firestorm. German authorities recorded deaths by location and date only." Schmidt thanked him and left. That afternoon, Major Kaufmann summoned him to his office. Kaufmann closed the door and remained standing. "I heard you received confirmation about your family," Kaufmann said. "I want to be direct with you. What happened was a tragedy, but it was not a war crime. Würzburg Station was a legitimate military target. You provided accurate intelligence. You did nothing illegal." Schmidt said nothing. Kaufmann continued. "Germany is going to surrender within weeks," he said. "After that, occupation. We will need German speakers with technical knowledge for administration. You have been valuable. That value can continue. But I need to know you are going to remain stable. I need to know you can continue working." Schmidt understood. Kaufmann was assessing whether Schmidt remained useful or had become a liability requiring removal. "I will continue working," Schmidt said. Kaufmann nodded. "Good." He paused, then added, "For what it is worth, you were in an impossible situation. You made the only rational choice available." He dismissed Schmidt. Schmidt returned to his quarters and sat at his desk. He opened the drawer where he had placed both photographs. The reconnaissance photo of Würzburg after the bombing. The family photograph from 1943. He looked at both for several minutes, then closed the drawer. In May, Germany surrendered. Schmidt remained at the airbase during transition to occupation operations. In June, he accepted a position with American military government in Bavaria as translator and administrative assistant. In August, he transferred to München for denazification processing work. His job involved interviewing Germans seeking employment with occupation authorities and assessing their political reliability. In October 1945, Schmidt requested leave to visit Würzburg. He took a military transport to the city. The old town was rubble. The cathedral stood as a burned shell. Schmidt walked streets he had known and could not orient himself because buildings that had provided landmarks no longer existed. He found the municipal cemetery on the eastern edge of the city. The mass graves were marked with numbered wooden posts. He found marker 204, a long trench filled with dirt, a small metal plaque, March 16, 1945. No individual names. Schmidt stood at the grave for 30 minutes. Other people visited other graves. An elderly woman placed flowers at marker 201. A man in a threadbare suit stood at marker 207. No one spoke. They stood in silence at their respective trenches. Schmidt walked to Haugerring afterward. The street existed as a cleared path through rubble. Foundations remained where buildings had stood. He counted foundations until he reached number 47. The cellar hole was half filled with debris. He stood there until it began to rain, then returned to the transport depot. In March 1946, Schmidt emigrated to the United States under provisions for individuals who had provided valuable wartime service. He settled in Columbus, Ohio, where he found work as a translator for a manufacturing company. In 1948, he married an American woman named Catherine, a librarian. When she asked about his family in Germany, he said his parents were dead and he had lost contact with other relatives during the war. He did not mention Elisabeth or Anna. They lived in a small house. Schmidt worked at the manufacturing company, translating technical documents. He was competent and reliable. Catherine wanted children, but Schmidt said he was not certain he could be a good father. She did not press the question. In November 1959, Schmidt received a letter forwarded through Red Cross tracing services. The envelope was postmarked Würzburg. Inside was a single handwritten page in German. The letter was from a woman named Greta Hoffmann. She identified herself as Elisabeth's younger sister. She wrote that she had been living in Hamburg during the war, and had only learned of Elisabeth and Anna's deaths in 1947 when she returned to Bavaria. She had spent years attempting to locate surviving family members. Municipal records indicated that Werner Schmidt had survived and emigrated to America. She wrote, "I am trying to preserve memory of my sister and her daughter. I have almost nothing. No photographs, no personal items. Everything was lost in the fire. If you have any photographs of Elisabeth or Anna, or any letters, I would be grateful if you could send copies. I want my own children to know their aunt and cousin existed. I want there to be some record besides a number on a grave marker." She included her address in Würzburg and a telephone number. Schmidt read the letter 3 times. He placed it on his desk and looked at it for 20 minutes. Then he opened his desk drawer. The 2 photographs were still there. The family photograph from summer 1943, the reconnaissance photograph from March 1945 showing Haugerring destroyed. He could send Greta the family photograph. Anna smiling with missing teeth. Elisabeth with her serious expression. This is what Greta was asking for, evidence that her sister and niece had existed as people, not just names on a casualty list. But if he sent the photograph, Greta would respond. She would thank him. She would ask about Anna's personality, about Elisabeth's life before the war, about what Werner remembered. She would want to establish connection with the only person who had known her sister as wife and mother. And eventually, through conversation or inquiry, Greta would learn what Werner had been doing in February 1945 when he provided targeting coordinates for the railway station 800 meters from Haugerring 47. She would learn that he had given the Americans the information that made the bombing more effective. She would learn that accurate intelligence provided by Elisabeth's husband had contributed to Elisabeth's death. Schmidt could not send the photograph without eventually having that conversation. And he could not have that conversation. He placed the letter in the drawer with the photographs and closed it. He did not respond to Greta Hoffmann. 3 months later, a second letter arrived. It was shorter. It said simply that Greta hoped the first letter had reached him and that she remained hopeful he might have some small item or memory to share about Elisabeth and Anna. Schmidt placed this letter in the drawer as well and did not respond. No third letter came. In 1964, Schmidt was diagnosed with heart disease. He managed it with medication and continued working until retirement in 1968. He and Catherine traveled occasionally. They lived quietly. In 1970, Catherine was organizing papers in Schmidt's desk and found the letters from Greta Hoffmann. She asked Schmidt about them. He told her the truth. He had been married before. He had a daughter. They had died in a bombing. He had provided intelligence to American forces about targets in his hometown. His wife and daughter had been killed in the resulting raid. Catherine asked if he had known they would be killed. Schmidt said he had known it was possible. He had calculated the risk. He had provided the information anyway because refusing would have accomplished nothing except ending his usefulness to the Americans. Catherine was quiet for a long time. Then she asked, "Why did you never respond to these letters?" Schmidt said, "Because I cannot explain to Elisabeth's sister what I did. I cannot send her a photograph of Anna and then tell her that I gave the Americans the coordinates that killed her." Catherine asked, "Do you think you should have refused to help them?" Schmidt said, "I do not know. I only know that I did help them, and everyone I helped them bomb is still dead." Catherine did not ask further questions. They did not discuss it again. In 1973, Schmidt had a severe heart attack. He survived but was hospitalized for 3 weeks. During recovery, he asked Catherine to bring him the photographs from his desk drawer at home. He wanted to see Anna's face. He could remember the photograph clearly, but he wanted to hold it. Catherine searched the desk. She found the letters from Greta Hoffmann. She found the reconnaissance photograph of Würzburg. She found old tax documents and payroll records. She could not find the family photograph. Schmidt tried to remember when he had last seen it. 1968? 1970? He had moved it several times over the years, from drawer to drawer, from the desk to a filing cabinet and back. At some point, in some move or reorganization, it had been misplaced, or thrown out accidentally with other papers, or lost in a way that could not be reconstructed. The only physical image of his daughter was gone. What remained was his memory of a 7-year-old girl afraid of the dark, and that memory was now 29 years old and uncertain in its details. He could not remember clearly if Anna's missing teeth had been both front teeth or just one. He could not remember if Elisabeth's hair in the photograph had been pulled back or down. The details were dissolving. Catherine said, "I am sorry. I will keep looking." Schmidt said, "Do not. It is gone." Werner Schmidt died on November 4, 1976, at the age of 65. Cause of death was heart failure. He was buried at Green Lawn Cemetery in Columbus, Ohio. Catherine arranged a small funeral. Approximately 30 people attended. The service was brief. After Schmidt's death, Catherine found the reconnaissance photograph of Würzburg in his desk drawer. The photograph showed the destroyed railway station and the burned residential district. Someone had drawn a small circle in pencil around one block on Haugerring. She also found the carbon copy of Schmidt's intelligence consultation from February 1945, listing targets in Bavaria. Würzburg main station was marked Priority 1 with notation in Schmidt's handwriting. Critical logistics node, recommend immediate action. Catherine contacted the National Archives. She asked if these documents should be preserved as historical records. The archives accepted them. They were filed in Record Group 407, Records of the Adjutant General's Office, World War II Operations Files, European Theater. They remain there. Researchers can request access by submitting Form SF-86 with appropriate clearances. The documents do not indicate that the intelligence officer who recommended immediate action against Würzburg Station had family living 800 meters from that station. This information exists only in Schmidt's Red Cross inquiry file, which is stored separately and is not cross-referenced with operational targeting documents. In Würzburg, the memorial wall erected in 1978 lists Elisabeth Schmidt and Anna Schmidt among 5,000 names. Grave marker 204 at the municipal cemetery remains. It is rarely visited now. Most people who had personal connection to those buried there are dead themselves. In Columbus, Ohio, Werner Schmidt's grave is marked with a simple headstone. Name, birth date, death date. Nothing more. The grave is maintained by the cemetery but receives no visitors. Catherine Schmidt died in 1984. She left no children. The house in Columbus was sold. The new owners found nothing in the desk drawers except instruction manuals and outdated warranties. In the National Archives, Box 17 of Record Group 407 contains Folder 243. Inside that folder is a single-page listing coordinates for a railway sorting station in Würzburg, Germany, dated February 14, 1945. Below the coordinates, in Werner Schmidt's handwriting, is the recommendation that changed the trajectory of approximately 5,000 lives, including 2 that he had promised to protect until death. The page is filed between a weather report and a fuel requisition form. It has been requested by researchers 4 times since 1976. None of those researchers knew that the intelligence officer who authored the document was buried 1,200 kilometers away under a headstone that mentions nothing about the war.